In 1993, Michael Jordan was the most famous athlete on the planet, and by his side through every championship was his beloved father, James Jordan. That summer, while James was sleeping in his Lexus on the side of a North Carolina highway, the unthinkable happened. He was shot and killed. By 1996, the case seemed closed. Two local teenagers, Larry Demery and Daniel Green, were arrested. Demery took a plea deal to testify against Green, and Green was sentenced to life in prison as the triggerman. But 30 years later, the very man who oversaw that trial, Judge Gregory Weeks, is now leading the effort to set Daniel Green free. In a recent move that has shocked legal observers, Judge Weeks admitted that the jury was never shown critical forensic evidence that directly contradicted the state's case. This admission suggests the narrative sold to the public in 1996 was built on an incomplete reality, omitting facts that could have changed the trial's outcome entirely. The conviction relied on two conflicting accounts. Demery testified that Green pulled the trigger. Green maintained he wasn't even at the scene, claiming he only arrived later to help hide the body. Under North Carolina's felony murder rule, if Green was present during the robbery, he is legally guilty of murder, even without touching the gun. Thus, proving Green was miles away was the only way to establish innocence. His defense depended on a solid alibi. Green actually had a primary alibi witness, a woman named Bobby Jo Murillo. She could place him at a cookout far from the highway, yet Green's original lawyers never called her to testify. Without that witness, the jury was forced to choose between two sets of fingerprints and the word of a co-defendant who had everything to gain from a plea deal. Physical evidence was also used to anchor the prosecution's story, but Judge Weeks now admits that results from blood tests taken inside the Lexus were never disclosed to the jury. Those tests were kept hidden during the trial, despite the fact that the blood-like substance found in the vehicle may not have even belonged to Daniel Green. There was also a massive discrepancy regarding the victim's shirt. The initial autopsy noted there was no bullet hole in the chest area of James Jordan's shirt, which directly contradicted the state's theory of a fatal chest wound. The shirt was eventually exhumed from a dirt backyard where it had been buried because of the intense smell. By the time it reached the courtroom, it had been handled by multiple agents and miraculously gained a bullet hole. Then there was the weapon. The gun found in Green's home was presented as the murder weapon, but ballistics reports stated clearly that investigators could, quote, not get a conclusive match between that gun and the bullet that killed Jordan. Between the missing blood tests, the altered shirt, and the unproven ballistics, the physical evidence used to convict Green was far more fragile than the jury realized. To understand how these gaps were allowed to exist, we have to look at Robeson County, North Carolina, an area that was later investigated for deep systemic corruption within law enforcement. Following the murder, the very first phone call made from James Jordan's car phone went to a convicted drug dealer named Hubert Larry Deese. Deese was a co-worker of the state's star witness, Larry Demery, but he was also the biological son of the sheriff who was leading the entire murder investigation. This specific sheriff's department was later dismantled during Operation Tarnished Badge, a massive corruption sweep that resulted in over 20 officers being charged. By blocking the jury from seeing this personal link between the suspects and the lead investigator, the court effectively sanitized an investigation that was riddled with conflict. In 2020, Larry Demery was granted a parole date, only for the commission to abruptly cancel his release a year later with no public explanation. Meanwhile, new affidavits from a reporter and legal counsel suggest Demery has admitted he lied on the stand about seeing Daniel Green pull the trigger. Today, Daniel Green is still behind bars, waiting for an evidentiary hearing that would allow a court to finally look at the data Judge Weeks says was hidden decades ago. When a case is built on a single plea deal while forensics are buried and police ties are obscured, the question shifts. It is no longer just about who committed the crime. It is about whether the justice system actually found the truth.